Good morning. I'm Pratap Singh Gaikwad and welcome to the Buggy Khana. In today's episode, I have the privilege of introducing you to Mr. Viveck Goenka, Chairman and Managing Director of the Indian Express Group. He's also known as one of India's leading vintage and classic car collectors, and also happens to own India's #1 restoration facility. Coincidentally, today also happens to be the day when I get to collect my 1966 Mercedes-Benz 230 SL. And I'd love to share this experience with all of you. So without further ado, let's make our way to the facility. So we're on our way to Navi Mumbai now, and taking the weather conditions into account, and in order to make the journey more entertaining, we have decided to take the 4x4s. So let's go. So we're on our way to New Bombay, where Mr. Goenka has his restoration facility. Idea is really to meet up with him, get to understand him a bit better, his passions, and also to get a tour of the facility. So today I'm also very excited because I'm getting the delivery of my Mercedes post paint and body job that I'd given to Alan. And while I've been tracking the project and getting photographs, today is actually the first time that I'm going to see the car for myself. So therefore, I'm extremely excited. Good afternoon, Mr. Goenka.
Good afternoon, Maharaj Kumarji.
Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us, and I'd like to welcome you onto the Buggy Khana.
Thy wishes my command, Maharaj Kumarji.
Thank you so much, sir. There are a few questions I would like to ask you, primarily so that our viewers can better understand what happens at this facility, how this facility came into being, and the DNA behind this. So if I can start with the first question, is when and why did you start this facility?
I have to go back a little bit. I've been very passionate about cars since my childhood, and I started work on Fiat, which is my first love. I used to build engines and tune cars when I was very, very young. I used to drive my Fiat to school when I was all of 8 years old. So my love affair with the automobile began there, and it kind of kept growing. After some time, I decided that I should get into vintage cars because I was exposed to a vintage car when I was very young. And then I found that after buying my first vintage car, I had a problem finding the right place to restore it. And then my collection slowly grew. I had 4 or 5 of them, and I was having a tough time being at the mercy of people who claimed to know how to restore cars. I found that they were cutting corners, they were doing a lot of shortcuts. Some of them didn't even know their job. So I said the only way to do this is to start it myself. And that's how this facility came into being.
And how long has it been operational for?
Well, it started very small 35 years ago. It used to be a small little place at the Express Towers where I could do 4 cars at a time. And from there we started mechanical work, then we put in screens and started painting, and then we got some upholstery work in the basement done. So basically I've always tried to keep all the key parts of the restoration under my roof rather than subcontracting it outside. That's how it began, and then my collection grew and this facility grew. We migrated to New Bombay and we expanded the facility as you can see today.
Seeing as your collection grew, if I could just ask you, what is the current number that you're at?
Well, I'm a little over 100 at this point in time, and I have every intention of bringing it down to a very desirable 50.
Okay, that's great. And you mentioned about scaling up your facility. How did you build the capability?
The fact of the matter is, I do have people who came with the bad baggage of bad practices and the good baggage of having some knowledge. For example, a denter would come, he had some knowledge of denting, but his practices were all wrong. The electrician would come, I'd find somebody who knew a little bit about his work, but his practices were all wrong. For example, joining wires and taping them. It's not allowed in my garage. They have to be soldered, they have to be clips. There are a certain amount of SOP, standard operating practices, that they have to follow. And I've taught them all this with my own hands. It's not that, I just hired people who knew the job. Almost every single job, including painters, how to sand a car down, I physically have done it with my own hands and taught them. Basically, what I did was I picked people with less knowledge or no knowledge who worked as helpers in other garages, so that I didn't have to get them to unlearn what they knew wrong. I had to teach them something which they already have some idea. And that is how I built my talent. God has been kind that I've been able to retain talent. Very few people have left me in the last 30 years.
What are the facilities that one has over here? So, if I have a car which needs total restoration, would you be able to do everything? And what are those things?
As I said, I like all my key activities to be under my control, under my roof. So, starting from sandblasting, I have everything that you can think of. Sandblasting, denting, painting, electrical work, mechanical work, upholstery and lining work, and the most crucial of them all, chrome plating. All the work that we do, we found in India, chrome plating was a huge challenge. Nobody was able to do a proper job of chrome plating. So I decided to take on the challenge of actually researching and developing chrome plating myself. You will see when you go around the kind of facilities we do. So every single activity that is required for restoring a car, minus manufacture of tires and tubes, everything is in-house.
Now I come to you again with a car in a very poor condition. What is the time frame that it would take you to restore a car?
As I said, fundamentally for me, this is not a profession, it's a passion. And I do not undertake professional work as a job work in my garage. See, I still have more than 50 cars of my own pending restoration. So having said that, it's only those cars that belong to friends of mine or people who I think are passionate and need a good job done for a good car. They are the only cars that I undertake to do. And in all these 30 years, I might not have done more than 12 cars that belong to others. Having said that, if somebody is really in a hurry or wants a car for a particular event, I try my best to do it in less than a year. But otherwise, a full job without cutting corners, going into every detail as a purist, I don't think can be done in less than 2 years, whoever you may be.
And you yourself, as you were mentioning earlier, have a backlog of your own cars that still need to be done.
I do have a very large backlog. There are cars which are 50% done, 60% done, 90% done, 95% done. And such cars, there are more than 50 of them still pending. Problem is, since we can't find staff and I can't find the time to spend more than a day in a week or a day in 10 days at the garage, work does slow down a little bit. But fortunately, some of the people who have worked with me for many years are able to take this forward to some extent. But it's like, having an orchestra without a conductor. If I'm not there, things really can't happen beyond the point. And I'm quite happy it is that way. Because they can't cut corners if I'm watching.
Right. So in other words, it's near impossible to try and sneak in a car.
Well, if Maharaj Kumar asks for a car to be sneaked in, I'll still do it for him. I can get my team to work, say, 18 hours a day and pull it out faster. But he also will be unfair to ask for it if he doesn't really want it.
And I really appreciate that. And as you can see, we have one of my cars here behind us, which Mr. Goenka will unveil later on in this show. Coming back to the questions, you have restored and been part of so many restorations over the years. Is there a particular car or a project that was very challenging that you still remember as being a very challenging but a very satisfying project?
To be honest, most of the car dealers offer me cars that are beyond restoration. So I've done so many of them which people have thought I'm mad to even accept. But if the car was a very interesting car or something that I was very keen on, I would still do it. Because obviously we couldn't lay our hands on cars earlier. We couldn't import cars earlier. Having said that, if I have to choose one, it was a Rolls-Royce Phantom 2 that belonged to the Maharaja of Ramgarh. The car was so badly molested that no four corners of the car, none of the fenders were even aligned to each other. Each one had its own shape. So we started from there. There was no reference, there was no nothing. And one of the finest restorers in the country before me had given up, saying this car can't be done right. I took it on as a challenge and we worked on it. We started from scratch. And after I finished it, the experts who had seen the car earlier, Rolls-Royce experts who had seen the car earlier, couldn't believe it was the same car. The Rolls-Royce Phantom 2 belonged to the Maharaja of Ramgarh. Restored. It took a full 2 years to do the job, but I'm proud to say it's probably one of the finest jobs that anybody could have done in this country. That's something which I will never forget.
And is this car still with you?
Unfortunately not, because I landed up having 4 Phantom 2s. So a very dear friend of mine from Mysore wanted to start a collection and then he wanted a Rolls Royce. So I let him have it.
You've also been, again, doing this restoration for a long period of time. Have you seen the quality of work overall improving over the years?
Absolutely. Starting from the first Cartier, which happened some 12-14 years ago, where it was an apology to see many cars that were being presented at the Cartier, till 4 or 5 Cartiers later, when everybody's standards started going up. I mean, please don't consider me immodest, but I am also largely responsible for raising the bar of restoration, is what people acknowledge that has happened in my garage. And some of our best friends who compete with each other and help each other at the same time, all of them have taken their restoration levels up. So much so, even smaller garages in different parts of the country, the owners who have given the cars to them have said, if Bombay can do that, why can't we in Chennai? If Bombay could do that, why can't we do this in Jaipur? So the entire level has risen, and we are proud of it, that today Indian cars are making a mark on the international scene.
How would you compare the quality of Indian restoration to that which is happening overseas today?
Well, there are a few of us in India who can compete internationally without any hesitation.
Right. So we have really reached that.
We have reached that
stage now. Excellent. Now, your advice to someone who's wanting to get into creating a collection of cars for themselves, what is the advice that you would give them?
Don't do it just for the show, do it with passion. If you don't have passion, don't get into vintage cars.
Got it. I think that's very true, and it goes all around, because as you said, even for you to be involved, you need to see that passion coming out from the other person. Now, the most important question, I have another car for restoration. When could I send it to you? When do you have a slot available?
You have a privilege in my heart. You can do it whenever you like.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time that you've given us.
Thank you for choosing me to be on your show. I'm very grateful for it. And I do wish you all the very best. May your collection keep growing.
Thank you. It's hard, as I am seeing, to grow a collection, to maintain a collection. I mean, I can only imagine what you go through with having 100 cars. And I would say it's not just the number, but the quality of cars that Mr. Goenka has is, again, world standard. So I can only imagine the hard work that goes behind maintaining such a collection.
My pleasure comes from restoring a piece of junk, not just buying a restored car. So I just love that.
So thank you very much, sir. And may I request you, if you could unveil my car, which you have done the painting
We
on.
should we should do it together.
That's
Let's do that.
absolutely stunning. Thank you all. I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Goodbye.